All right. Well, I'm very excited to introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Amy Sekhar. She is a facilitator with Roundtable, but she's so much more and done so much work in the facilitation coaching and obviously disability rights space. And I'm so proud that you are on the team at Roundtable and that you've agreed to do this interview. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready and thank you. I'm proud to be on the team.
Yay. Okay, so I usually skip introductions because a lot comes out in the interview itself. But let's try the interview, and then if there's anything you want to add that you think people need to know about you, we can always do that anytime in the
Sure.
middle or at the end. Sound good?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things I have found in doing these interviews is we all get more out of it if we're willing to go under the waterline and go a little bit deeper because we think that's where the real wisdom lives. So I always like to ask permission. Are you ready to go there? Are you willing to go there? Can we go there today?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things we believe at Roundtable is that everyone is a leader. Everyone influences the people around them, whether they like it or not, just by existing in the world. So in this way, we're all leaders. What kind of leader are you?
Um, I think that a couple of things are really important to me in leadership, and one of those is modeling um kind of how I want to move through the world. So I think of just modeling my values, if that makes sense. Really showing up in a way that is fully authentic to who I am. And I think one of those things, I think as I showed up this way as an educator, and I do this as a facilitator, public speaker, coach, is really meeting people where they are. I think one of my gifts is being able to, um, I don't know if the word, since I'm a language person, this is the word that comes to me is translate kind of information in a way that is impactful and meaningful to people that hits them where they are. I believe that knowledge doesn't belong to anybody. And so for me, it's really important to kind of, I think my one of my superpowers is being able to synthesize information and kind of um, make it meaningful to people. Yeah. I don't know
Mm.
if that's a what kind of leadership style that would be, but yeah,
Well, we're
leading by
going to go
example.
deeper, but one of
Yeah.
the threads I would pull on is it sounds to me that being a model for that and meeting people where they are means you have to be aligned with your personal values, as you said.
Yes.
What are some of the values that drive you?
So authenticity, which I think is big for a lot of people, and I think for me as a disabled person that has grown to mean something else. I think I spent a lot of my younger years um I don't want to say masking, but really performing what I think people wanted for me. Um, and so I think secondary to that is this value of integrity, of really um, showing up fully. I think for some people, integrity and authenticity are similar. For me, they're different. Of really being able to show up fully with your values. Um, and I think. Yeah, I another one is humor, which I think that it is one of the things that I bring to the table. Is someone once commented that I am able to inject a little bit of levity at just the right time. When I was facilitating work at an equity center, that was just something people were like, you just have this timing that it's not inappropriate, it's just very um just brings in a needed space. Um, so humor is huge for me. Um, and curiosity and creativity. Those are huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see all of those in you in the way you've shown up at Roundtable. I'm just scanning all of those and like particularly the humor piece. Things can get tense, things can get difficult. And you're right, timing is every humor doesn't work if it's not the right time, right? So it's all about timing. You're right. I have noticed that. Okay.
And I think it's about listening too, right? And one of the little facts about me is before COVID hit, I was in an improv troupe. And I think that was actually where I learned so many of my listening skills and being in the moment and really learning to just be with what's in the space. And of course, that's a huge coaching skill also. So that for me was transformational. Um, that that humor doesn't have to be deflection. It's actually moving with what's in the space.
Yes, love that. Okay. So, Amy, how do you want to be known?
Ooh. Um, I think this is kind of an interesting thing. I was thinking a lot recently about my kind of life purpose as I think about it, and uh, I think of myself as a connector of people, of ideas. Um, I love when I hear from an individual how much I've impacted them, and then also just larger groups. So I feel like there is this sort of rippling out of the effect that we all have in this world. So for me, I take that so seriously, um, that my role as kind of a connector, a motivator of people ripples out. I once heard on a podcast, I think it was StoryCorps maybe, where someone talked about they're in a famous civil rights photo at one of the diners, eating, and I think they're in the background, and they asked them like, what do you feel like being in the background of the civil rights movement? And they said, I'm okay being a comma in the history book because I was there. And I think that for me, I don't need to be up front and center. I want to be continuing to do the work and knowing that my impact is rippling out. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love the metaphor of the ripple because you have it's like sort of never ending, right?
Mhm.
And it can go so far. I think about planting seeds as the metaphor, right? Like you plant the seed, similar with the ripple, it can slow down, but you can always create a new one. And same with the
Mhm.
seed. If you keep nurturing it and planting it, it's going to have these effects far beyond the seed itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about this in the very introduction, about performing or masking. What do people get wrong about you when they first meet you?
Um, I think that I think one of the kind of my gifts can also, it's one of those double-edged swords, is my humor. I think people think I'm light and free, and I'm actually quite a processor and thinker. Um, One of the most powerful questions when my coach mentor asked me was, "Who is Amy when she's not smiling?" And I
Ooh.
think, yeah, I know, because I do think as a disabled person, I really was expected to be um, what people wanted me to be. There's this idea of there's the happy disabled person and the bitter disabled people, and I think a lot of us are trained to show up as this happy, optimistic. I'm going to show up for my physical therapy, um, and so it made me really intentional about. Uh, what is behind the humor? Am I using it intentionally? Am I deflecting? And I think I
Mm,
was for a long time. Um, so I think that vulnerable part of me has opened up more recently. I think through coaching,
yeah.
both being a coach and coaching, we have to show up that way. And I think it's been really challenging and transformative. So I think that kind of um, that reflective processing part of me, the quiet part of me, the less gregarious part of me, I think is what surprises people.
Hmm. I'm curious, this is a really powerful question, and it obviously had a developmental effect on you. Where are you now with that question?
Oh, I think I'm always with that question. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just part of the work that I do. Who am I today? Who am I working towards? Um, and what does it mean to show up vulnerably? Um, I think to be open to transform, um, I think to show that, you know, particularly my identity as a disabled woman is complicated. Um,
Hmm.
that it's not that I think um one of the transformative kind of ideas that has shaped me recently is the idea of what's called crip punk or cripple punk, that really espouses the idea. It's a reclaiming of a term, right? That's been used to harm the community, but to really challenge the notion that disabled people aren't complicated human beings, that um, we have tattoos, we have, well, I have green hair. Just it really challenges that we move through this world in bodies that aren't necessarily welcomed, and we're fully complicated human beings. And I think that movement has really um, allowed me to show up
Mm.
in ways that's not who's Amy when she's not, I'm not the smiling, and part of me is smiley.
Yeah, yeah,
And to
yeah,
also show the not so happy sides of being disabled in this world.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So totally aligns with that number one value of authenticity,
yeah,
right? Which I also see as easier said than done and a lifelong journey.
yeah, yeah,
And if we're lucky, we have fleeting moments of it consciously and unconsciously throughout, right?
yeah.
Okay. What, Amy, commitments have you made that you no longer believe in?
I think the one, this is a hard one because it's one that I no longer believe in and I have a hard time letting go of,
Mm.
is I think the kind of hustle culture of just that productivity looks a certain way, that we have, which is of course ableist, right? That not all bodies have the
Right.
capacity to work in the same ways. And so I think that I perform so much of be an ideal worker, be an ideal student, work hard. If you work hard, because I thought if I had to work twice as hard to get half as far. Um, and then I'm still processing it, but I read probably a few years ago, Rest is Resistance, and it's just still, it is, I'm still figuring out what that looks like for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Patricia Hersey is an incredible leader. And same thing, Amy. I read it years ago and I was like, I still hold on to, well, it sounds good in theory.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
gotta be, like even my asking, what are the mechanics of this is
Yeah.
problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every time I don't respond to an email in a certain amount of time, and I'm working with a disabled web designer right now, and I love how she moves through time and makes um what we call crip time really part of how she works. It's in her email, like, response times may vary. I honor that our bodies are going to show up, and it really is a for me, it's been a transformative way of
Mm.
working with somebody, um, where that sense of urgency that's so false, what's possible when that isn't the thing that's pressuring you to get things done, that it's actually the value of the work, the belief in the work, and not urgency. So I've got that core concept, and it's a work in progress of just
Yeah.
letting go a little bit.
I hear you. Like it's really making the macro micro, right? Like this is a deeply conditioned system of oppression, and we are products of that system. And so resisting it is um is a journey, is a commitment, is like no easy answers to it, which is why I really appreciate that you said I've let go of the commitment and I'm having a hard time with
Yeah.
it because I wake up every morning thinking the same thing. Am I gonna burn myself out
Hmm.
by mistake again? By
Hmm.
mistake. No, it's just because I'm a product of the society that I
Right.
burnt myself out. And it's very easy. Part of that narrative is also to blame ourselves when we can't let go or when we feel guilty for not responding to the email or whatever it is, right? That we take it
Right.
personally when instead of projecting that back onto that system.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's true of all the oppressive systems, right? We're so conditioned by them. Um, and that's their grasp on us, is
Right,
that
right.
we believe if we follow the system, we'll gain something.
Yeah, yeah. I was watching some show yesterday and some guy was like, "Oh, you know the line, Amy. It's like, oh, I don't even think about that." And it's like, ugh, sometimes I wish I had the luxury and the privilege to not think about that. But the ones of us who are thinking about it are thinking about it because we've experienced the marginalization, the underrepresentation, the pain and the hurt of this system that does not include us,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
It's not made for us.
Right.
So it must be nice. And I'm also glad to be on this side of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Because there's community also on this
there's
side of it.
community,
Yeah.
there's solidarity, there's
Yeah.
work, there's deep commitment and work that you and I are doing that we're not going anywhere despite what our administration in the United States
Right.
wants us to do, right?
Right.
This is a very personal thing.
Hmm.
So speaking of that, where will you be in your life 1 year from now?
Ooh, um, I know. I feel like that's such a hard question these days since everything is changing every minute. Um, I would like to think that I will still be doing this work. Um, that I Yeah, that I it sounds weird to say, but that I'll still be right here. And I think my answer to that would have been very different a couple of months ago. And I feel like being right here, still doing the work in a year from now is going to be so hard.
Yeah.
As I think about, the temptation that a lot of people have to leave, to stop doing the work, that just
Yeah.
saying a year from now, I'm still in this, um, not
Yeah.
going anywhere. Just had a committee meeting on a DEIB committee I'm on, and they asked all of us, "Are you still gonna be on this committee? Because this is not a necessary. Your names are all out there," and we were all, yeah, we're gonna keep doing this. So I think for me, that's the vision I have. um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think to me this moment is calling for resilience and all the reserves that we have built up over the past several years, we have to now put into practice. So to me, if you are still here 1 year from now, that's a sign of resilience.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think that is one of those gifts that oppressive systems gives people is resilience. And I know a lot of people talk about resilience as if it's something that's wonderful and magical, and it is. And the reason that we have to be that way is not wonderful and magical.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I firmly believe that resilience is necessary, and I hate that we have to have it.
Same. I totally agree. In fact, I'm offended when I used to not be offended by this. I used to wear it as a badge of honor. But these days, when people say, gosh, you're so strong, I'm actually offended by that because it's like, I don't want to be
Yeah.
like this, right? I don't
Yep.
want to have to be strong and resilient and overcome the odds, right?
Yep.
The reason I have to be this way is because the odds are stacked up against me and people like me.
Yeah.
And I don't have a
Yeah,
choice.
that's something I heard as a kid so much is, in the hospital, kids are resilient. She's resilient. She's so strong. She's just so happy. And, the flip side of that is it never occurred to someone to actually say, I see you. I see the pain. I see that things are happening to you, to your body that are not in your control. And instead I learned to be that smiley Amy that I'm resilient, I'm
Mm,
strong. And
mm,
so
yeah.
now I'm like, yeah, I'm resilient and strong, and I'm also, you have to contend with the force that is me.
Yeah. Yes. I
Yeah.
felt that. What do you feel most grateful to have in your life?
Ah, I think at this moment it is the kinship of community spaces. Um, I've worked really hard to build strong connections um, with other disabled folks doing the intersectional cross movement work. And I think that's the fact that we are checking in on each other, really holding each other up in this moment when, each one of us gets to take turns of today, I need you to hold me up a little bit. I feel like that's, um, yeah, that is something I didn't know as a kid. I didn't know anyone like me. I didn't have models of disabled people who, you know, were, I mean, my vision of disabled people was, like a poster child. And I hate
Mhm.
saying that. It hurts me to say that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I didn't have this strong vision of what disability could look like. And
Mm,
so just having that now, and also having cross-generational friendships in the community,
mm,
um, the fact that some people are calling me a disability elder now, at first I was like, I'm not that old. And now I realize that's a privilege. That
mm,
is really a privilege to have earned that kind of wisdom that people respect, that is not that I know all the answers, but I've been around the disability block, the inaccessible block.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. What crossroads are you at right now?
Ooh, um, Yeah, this is again with the disability community. I think we're at a rough, rough spot. Um, and that our rights are really on the chopping block. Section 504 of the Rehab Act is um, on the block, and people will die if this goes away. Um, and I've seen the fracturing of the disability community um, over what collective solidarity, collective liberation looks like. And I'm having to make decisions about what work I'm willing to take on in
Mhm.
the community because I need to align with my values. So I'm really at that crossroads of making decisions about um, how to call people in um, gently, and also um, really it's again that connecting thing that this is a collective struggle, and that how do I stand in this place, and because I do know, at least in my in the disability community around probably this region, my voice does carry some weight. Um, so really making sure that I'm willing to put some things on the line.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay. We ask this question in every single interview. I always am surprised by what people say. It's kind of a fun one. What's a semi-big decision you have to make this month?
Yeah, but um, I don't know if this one's fun for me.
Hmm.
Um, but it's actually a pretty big decision, but it's the one that's occupying a lot of my mental space. Uh, is my service dog. Is I know he needs to retire early, and uh just really figuring out what that looks like for him is taking up so much of my space because um it is a selfless thing because it needs to be done for him, knowing that I'm still on the list for another service dog, um that it will impact my independence, and I owe it to him
Yeah.
uh to retire him when he needs to. But it's also a really hard process for them to retire. They don't understand. Their purpose is kind of
Ugh.
gone. But I don't know if I have the luxury of time. So yeah, I think that's just a decision that's on my mind, that how do I do this? How do I do right by him, even though it's not a good decision for me?
Yeah, this is a
What a
really big,
downer.
yeah, well, no, it strikes me as actually a really big decision, and
Yeah,
I
that's why I was like,
know,
I don't even know if I have a semi big. I
yeah,
feel like I just have one big one.
yeah, yeah, it could be that none of the other decisions matter when you have this really big one that I know you've been present with for weeks now. And so I know that it's a hard one,
Yeah.
deeply emotional, deeply practical, right? Like
Yeah.
complicated in all the ways that big
Yeah.
decisions are. Yeah.
And I think the relationship with the service dog is just so unknown to people who haven't had that. That it's hard because it's also a public sort of, people will say, "Where's your dog?"
Mm.
And that's painful.
Yeah.
When my first service dog just died very suddenly, it felt like public grief in a way, and also people didn't understand. So it is this sort of extra thing I'm carrying that I'm sure people are like, stop talking about it already, but it's huge for me and
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it brings up another question for me, which I think we could probably spend days on just one question. So I'm sort of putting you on the spot with this question, but I'm also just curious to see what's sort of the first thing that comes up, which is what would you like people to know about the disabled community?
Ooh, um, I think really is how diverse that we are. I think that really shocks people. I think people have a very specific vision of disability in their heads, and we cross all other identities. We have, you know, queer disabled folks, we have black and brown disabled folks. All you think of it, and we exist, and I think that's why for me, solidarity is so essential because we cut across the entire human experience, and disability is part of the human experience. I think that's what also surprises people is that there is such thing as disability pride, because a lot of people are saying, why would you want to be proud of a body that doesn't function? Um, but it's really claiming that this is part of the natural variance of the human experience, and we are worthy, right? We are worthy of existing and moving through um, this world, and that looks so many ways. And I love, like, I think that's the thing that's so surprising. I love disabled people. I love us, and I think that's really shocking um, that a lot of us feel that way. Some people are really like, how? And there's nothing like being in a group of other disabled people who love themselves and just like it's magic,
Yeah.
And I think that because I think we take care of each other too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
I love the way you talk about it. It's inspiring, it's beautiful, it's real. It's all those values you talked about early on. And I have such appreciation that I've met you to begin with and that we get to work together and that we get to grow together. I'm so thankful. Is there anything else you'd like to add to anything you've shared today?
I, I don't think so. Now I'm like, where have we been? I feel like
I
we've
know.
been so many places. But I also just want to reiterate how much gratitude I have that you came into my life. I think I've just learned a lot and have new questions and journeys that open up for myself. I feel like every time I see you, like, oh, gotta think about that later. I have a lot of gratitude.
Oh, that means a lot. Thank you, Amy. All right. Well, thank you. This was there's a lot for me to reflect on in this one. I was just telling someone on our team last week when I'm doing these one-on-ones with each of you on the team. And I was like, yeah, I learned something from Avery every single time she's on a call. She says something, and even if she just says one thing, I'm like, oh, I need to write that down. So there's a lot in this one that I'm going to be reflecting on. Thank you.
That's what one of my the director at the Equity Center, she's like, you just deliver these truth bombs
Yes,
sometimes.
that's good. That's true. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, you have some gravitas sometimes too. And she's like, and then you follow up with a little joke. It's like, what?
That's great feedback. All right, let me stop this.